just learned on August 1 of this year, YouTube is going away. Um, don't know if that really affects anybody or not. Well, I mean, it doesn't affect anything that I'm doing because I'll figure it out. But when the poor man speaketh, oh man, this is going to be an epic one. So the other day, I uploaded a little 2-minute video um, on my actual computer, and I'm not sure if it's going to play the audio, but the audio is not messed up, right? The audio is just fine. When I did it at home, when I listened to it, because I always play the videos at least once before I upload them, at least once, and I'll listen to it. And normally I'll catch it, like the little robot voice thing or whatever. Like it'll slow it, like it's almost as if they slow down the audio so much so that like I don't know how it sounds, but it sounds really fucking weird. And no, just the live stream, like the ability to live stream the way that you can right now. They're doing away with it. I know why they're doing away with it. It's because of cats like myself doing way too much. They have to monitor too much activity. But it's okay. They messed up the other bit. I mean, I live with that because I'm not gonna redo it just for them to mess it up again. You feel me? Like it doesn't change anything. Uh, Kamala Harris is still not black. Uh, I'll always question. Look, I can't tell you guys how enough how being dark skinned is only a part of an equation, you know. But what I really wanted to talk about was just how out of touch people are. Uh, Let me find it real quick. I want to say it's Ecclesiasticus chapter 7. Let me just find it. Oh, and well, no. 13. Okay. I'm gonna just read it to you. I'm not even gonna share the page. Give me one moment. I was gonna read it to you real quick. And this is Ecclesiasticus 13:23. And this is in the King James Version Bible. Understand, this is normally found in the Apocrypha. So you'd have to buy a King James Version with the Apocrypha in it to get the Ecclesiasticus uh, um, reading. However, when a rich man speaketh, every man holdeth his tongue. And look, what he saith, they extol it to the clouds. But if the poor man speak, they say, what fellow is this? And if he stumble, they will help to overthrow him. Stop right there. I can't stress enough how there's this constant motion where people like to talk about the rich, the poor, the rich, the poor. But let me go ahead and say something. If a person is poor in the flesh and feels like they're rich in spirit, how can you relay this information to them? And vice versa. If a person is rich in the flesh but poor in the spirit, how do you relay this information to them? You see what I'm saying? Because maybe that's a duality form of speaking. But I take it as one level of a person with money and resources who has things, people listen to. Person who doesn't have anything, nobody listens to. Now, what I find funny about that, there's all sorts of scriptures that explain how the poor person, even if they speak righteousness, right, the wicked people devise wicked devices. So if you hold on to just the fact that the poor person, and I'm going to get to my ultimate point here because it's really about people trying to make it seem as if you don't know what you're talking about. You see what I'm saying? Uh, I laugh. Um, I know more than a lot of people know. You know, I know less than a lot of people know, but I know a lot more than a lot of people know. You get what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where, because I don't always have the material gain that somebody else may have, people may not believe what I'm saying out of my mouth. So, once again, this is a funny one. I want y'all to understand this. Earlier this year or late last year, the black YouTuber had somebody do one of those swatting incidents on his home. Black YouTube made a huge big deal out of it. Huge big deal out of it. And I was wondering to myself, okay, now, what happens when one of these guys really gets in trouble, right? Now, granted, I'm not one of these guys. I'm me. But I'm like, what happens when one of them really actually catches a real beef with the system that they can't just, shuck off through paying some fines and maybe a little community service that they never tell anyone about? And since police don't really give a damn to go and put you on blast for this, that, it's not their job, because they can get sued like that, right on? The last thing you want to do is have somebody suing you for defamation of character, libel, anything like that. Libel, excuse me, Libel, which is just another form of putting somebody down or saying something about them that's inflammatory or or defamatory, and may be untrue or may be true, but still the way that it's put forth uh, is slanderous towards their character. The police aren't allowed to do that for the most part. They do so every once in a while. But the thing is, I've never seen one of them really actually caught up. I've watched YouTube for a long time now. Um, you hear about rappers and famous people getting caught up. Famous people getting caught up, but you never hear about the guys who were critiquing the actual people, right? Getting caught up. And what I think is awkward is because, see, people have this conception in their mind where when they read something, they automatically associate it to here and now. But I would bid them to do themselves a greater ado and say, okay, well, if the scripture says a rich man, well, is a rich man a person who has 10 goats, 100 goats, 1,000 goats? Like, what constitutes rich? And because let's just imagine a rich man has 10 goats, has chickens, has another 2 bulls, has several asses, right? And he has an abundance of gold and silver. Not too much, but he has enough. And let's say that this man is considered rich to the level of the people around him. He's rich to everyone else. See, I need you to really put your mind around the concept of rich and really put it in your mind. You see, because if you make it to where it's just people who are famous, but it doesn't say famous. It doesn't say when the kings of the earth or when the rulers speak. It says when the rich. So this is anybody to any level of gain or resource that is had or not had that people look at. I had a guy tell me not too long ago, even though I know I'm broke, tell me I'm hood rich, and I laughed to myself. But when he explains the situation, then I say, well, I hear your point, but in my definition of hood rich is different from his definition of hood rich, because he's in a different point and place than where I'm at, even though I know I'm like, I could be way better off. But where he's at, you see what I'm saying? He could be way better off, and he knows that. So there's the mindset where you have to be able to not only in your regular everyday life say, okay, well, what does this mean to me? But you have to step outside of yourself, get outside of yourself for a moment. For some people, that's easy to do. For some people, that's a little more difficult to do, or not as easy. But They can still do it. You have to get outside yourself and you have to say, okay, well, in what context are they speaking to me? And if I say to you that a poor person is not just a person who doesn't have liquidatable gain, right on, or tangible goods, whatever you want to say, right? It's also someone who lacks in their mental stability, or maybe someone who's has poor health, right on. You follow what I'm talking about? Like, so there's different ways to put the term poor and still apply what it said. There's different ways to apply the term rich and still apply what it says. It doesn't change. If you attempt to change it or mutilate it, I should say, and manipulate what it is to actually achieve, then that's something that you've done all on your own. But when the poor man does speak, he speaks truth. He's supposed to. He's not supposed to lie to you. So if I say that I'm poor, but I do live in a home that I do pay rent at, right? Apartment, this is where I live, this is the abode. But I say I'm poor because maybe to my definition of what I know I could have or what I think I could have, right? Or what is potentially possibly would be mine without other obstacles. These are things that a person sometimes will overlook. But the greater point is still to be said that a person cannot define that definition all on their own. I know what it means in point blank, verbatim, layman terms, but I would be hard to believe that every single person that accumulated a small level of wealth on this planet, and I'm not talking about like being a billionaire, but maybe they're like a multimillionaire, and maybe they really did do it like the hard way. And yeah, maybe they stepped on a few toes, but maybe those are the toes of people who would have stepped on their toes and would have stepped on their toes much harder had they had the chance. See, these are things that I I know that most people will never actually admit because they've never been in a position of business. They've never been in a point where, okay, let's make a deal with this person, even though I know that this group and this affiliate of this group have disdain or a level of distrust towards this other party and entity. But this party and entity delivers a service that no one else can deliver at the price that they deliver it for. And they're willing to deliver it to us for an even better price, just for the chance to be able to deal in the realm that we deal in. You see what I'm saying? So, and I won't use any specifics because you can fill in the blanks. You're a grown adult. You know, your imagination, I'm sure, is fully active. And what you imagine your life could be like in your own life. So you fill in the blanks and then you make these things more tangible to something that you can relate to. But the point is this, is that when you have a group who is, for the lack of better terms, held off or put to the side by another group of people, and it's only because they're seen to be lacking in something. So this person uh, may have a missing arm, right on. The scripture says that this person can't come into the assembly, nor or should they be sacrificing, but they can offer something for somebody else to sacrifice. So why can't this person speak righteousness out of their mouth just because they were born with a deformity or they went to war and they suffered a catastrophic injury? It shouldn't mean that now you don't listen to them. You see what I mean? For whatever reason, they're afflicted by this. And I think sometimes people have the hard task, the difficult task of distinguishing what is poor and what is rich. and they need to be able to distinguish it on several different levels, so that way they can understand why they agree with certain things a person says and then disagrees with other things. They should also have their understanding in this, so that way they know when somebody who is unrighteous overall is speaking, somebody who is unjust and ungodly, because there's nothing to agree with them. Overall, they may say things that you acknowledge, but you don't side with them. You don't say, "Oh yeah, I'm on his side in the end." No, you know what I mean. You just say to yourself, or you can speak to the truth of what a person says, but you can still point to their overall aim and their um, their overall task and goal. You see what I mean? Because sometimes if a person seeks to do something, what without admission, right? They'll tell you exactly what they're up to. And I know it's hard for people to believe it. I know it's like really like difficult, but the whole point is this right here is that when there's somebody who has less, it's hard for people to want to listen to you. You know, if you're if if you're a person who's a regular man born in the ranks of giants, right? Will you ever really be like them, no matter what you accomplish or gain or achieve? You see what I'm saying? Well, you will always be lacking, and in that sense of term, you could be poor, poor in stature, poor in size. You follow what I'm saying? So there's the physical base, tangible meaning that should be obviously acclimated to any situation. A person who has little gain, right? Little resource. And then there's the other intangible meaning, the spectral meaning, the frequency meaning that has megahertz and gigahertz and kilohertz. That if there were instruments to measure them per person, per decision, per function, right on, they could be measured just like that all throughout the day. Then you would know exactly how a person sided in their mind. You'd be like, oh, they answered with this many megahertz, kilohertz, gigahertz. They actually mean like this. You see what I'm saying? Because it's within this certain broadband of frequency for them to speak or to think or to feel like this. And this other broadband distinguishes as these things. But it's because, once again, the scientists who claim to be so smart, everything I'm saying is like, I'm way ahead of the game. I'm so far ahead, I can't even really explain how far ahead it is that I am. But this is really what they're trying to do. See, because that's what ultimate mind reading would pretty much be based on. Is they would have to read certain frequencies that your body emits, and your body would be emitting them at a certain wavelength, this, that, and the other. Um, you would essentially test a person in a rested state to see what their readings are, and then you would put them under what you think is so-called duress to see what those readings are, and then you would go in with the objective aim questions or activity to see if a person can actually handle or to see if they are telling the truth or not. All the things would be conditional, but still it would be frequency based. Uh, when I say I'm so far when I say I'm so far ahead, I'm so far ahead. Uh, when you don't have the resources, you understand. This is what I'm talking about when the poor man's speaking, because there's people who already have achieved what I'm talking about at very small levels, and some of them at larger levels, who know that what I'm saying is actually very much the truth. And my way of humanizing it to where a layman person can understand is actually incredible, because they may not have the ability to converse these things with the regular person. Trust me. Trust me when I say that's how they actually read brain waves and the patterns and all that stuff. They're machines that read frequencies. Okay, they're not reading anything else. Ultimately, a lie detector test, even when you talk about the little lines, those are all that is still frequency based. You see what I'm saying? So if a person is totally harmonious within their body, good or evil, they can normally manipulate or control their frequency. So this is why some people can get angry at will, get upset at will, calm themselves at will, if need be. There's all different sorts of ways of going about it. But my whole point of this is that people don't even know, once again, like, I know these types of things. I'll never talk about that because there's nothing to talk about in that realm because I'm poor in that realm. I'm poor in too many other different realms for people to believe what I'm saying. If I had something, right, they would extol it to the clouds. They would believe it. Those STEM schools, believe it or not, they would love to produce people just like myself. That's the objective, right on, is that in the next 10 years, the little children that are 8 and 9 years old are 18 and 19 and know pretty much everything I know now at 14 and 15. Right. So that way when they're graduating, supposedly, they're able to go into a full-blown profession. This is the idea of these projects. Ultimately, but a person would have to have the understanding of to where they're coming from and why would you seek to achieve that? Well, there's a massive gap and a massive hole in a lot of these professions, and they have to fill them up quickly. Otherwise, this nation, as they know it, will go under. It could go under much sooner than that, but that is the prognosis to the situation. Diagnosis, whatever. But that's how the fuck it goes. And I'm not joking, lying, or nothing like that. No thing like that am I doing. This is the truth. So when you wonder why I'm so objective to what everybody says, this is why, because I can stand back. There's so many different things that I know about that I never talk about that it's like they can't even keep up with me. You see what I'm saying? They're stuck. I I don't have the audience capacity, nor do I have the capacity to put up with the foolery that some of them endure. I just don't. I don't have the capacity to do that. Like I have the capacity in the sense to ask my people to pray for me as I pray for them because I have court this week, next week. So keep a young brother in your mind, type thing, right? And if I pass through your mind and the days of my court pass over, don't feel bad. Think about me before then. Pray for me today. Pray for me now. You see what I'm saying? Think about me now and put the energy out there. That's the difference between what I do and what somebody else will do. I'm not afraid to say that. I don't have anything to lose to say that. They're afraid to show themselves. They're afraid to show them their faces, but they will ask you for your copper and will say that I'm foolish to say this. I've expounded many of times why black people should be totally divested from this nation. Your divestment equals its death. Do you want to take it over in a wounded animal stage, or would you rather just leave this motherfucker dead and dry where it's at? I'd rather just leave it dead and dry where it's at. Do what I have to do to survive until then, play their game until then. And then once I see that they're finally just about, they can't take it no more, when I can move on, I'm moving on. I'm out of this place. That's it, that's all. But I'm waiting for that day. It doesn't come in this life. Oh, I pray it comes in my son's life. And any other children I may, have in this life, but all the people that live, all the youngsters that live, that are the greater part of 10 years younger than me, at least, pray that in their lifetimes something happens for them because it's a phenomenal thing that we're seeing, and people don't even acknowledge it. For the first time ever, there's a major discussion about not only the genealogy of the people in this country, but who is who is ultimately entitled to what. You see, the problem with black people, like I keep saying, is that they want to be everyone, and you can't be everyone. You have to just be yourself. So if you are a person who is of mixed lineage, amalgamated lineage, that is understandable, but that does not apply to every person on the scale that it may apply to you. For a person who is of a lineage that may be of what we call the ruling class, what some people in their bitter minds call the dominating class, those people and their lineage have nothing to do with our lineage. Totally different peoples, different things. They are, once again, I won't go to the I won't do what YouTube says, which is break the rules of dehumanizing folks. So I'm not going to dehumanize anyone and call anyone a subspecies or lesser than human. But the fact that there were laws and ordinance in place that intentionally dehumanize human beings of a certain hue, of a certain persuasion, if you will, I have to say this, that the group of people who have no traceable lineage on this planet are as much a human as any animal that is discovered in recent time, and we don't know where it comes from. So at best, I guess they're humanoid. But once again, though, this is just from the poor man speaking. I can say this as the poor man. It can't stop me. I have nothing to lose. Nothing. All they could try to kill me. That, once again, if you do it a certain way, then it looks like you obviously tried to kill me. If you send somebody up to me where I want you to, then they know how that could potentially go. Either way, it's not worth the trouble. Got much bigger fish to fry. But everything I say, though, trust and believe, because it falls on so little ears, they have that less to worry about. But the things that I do say are very bona fide. In that place, south, what they call Mexico, coming up north to all the so-called states that border, the land that borders it, those walls that they're building, those are going to be the walls that come down one day. Don't worry. Think I lie now. Think I tell lies now. You'll see. Hopefully in this lifetime. Hopefully soon. Sooner than they could think. Sooner than they could imagine. There's a belief within the military, in case anyone here has never served. In the United States military, there's a profound belief that the next large confrontation will be, again, on American soil. The next big one. That's what they say. If the next big one be here, you think it's the end all war, or do you think it's just a little skirmish? Huh? That's my question to you. If the next real big one is on this soil, is that end game? Is that it? Are we done? You see what I'm talking about? And if that's the case, if we're done at that point in that level, then where are all the people who well, where will they be when they say a guy like myself doesn't know what he's talking about? That wall down there is the wall, is the great structure of Babylon. Those walls. What's up, Martin? Quick fill-in. Just talking about how when a person is seen as lesser in any form of value, in any form of spectra, outside of the most base, tangible understanding, which is somebody who lacks, as I said, liquidatable goods, right on, You know what I'm saying? Or tangible resources. Don't worry. They got some. They're gonna have something. I gotta figure out my little money situation. Even if they don't have anything, I'm gonna figure something out because I'm pretty smart. But sweat not, fret not. I got a whole month to figure everything out. I don't plan on getting fired from the job. Things look okay, so so just just chill. You know, got a full check coming on Friday. Haha. You know, about time I get one of those. So you know, if their little YouTube webcam thing doesn't work like they said it will, uh, then we'll figure it out. But as I was saying though, Martin, you know, before I lose my train of thought, I was saying that the poor person, the person who is somebody who has lesser value in whatever station. What's up, brother? And that person who is of lesser value is is somebody who will normally be overlooked. And the greatest way to put it is like a guy who may have never played a sport, never did that sport, but he actually understands the functions of the sport, and they're a great coach. There was not a all this this guy was just a water boy his whole life, but he's a filthy coach. He never played a game like that for real, but he understands the mechanics of everything. There's people who never box that are excellent boxing coaches. People who never really practiced they may have studied martial arts, but they never became like a high level fighter or professional or nothing like that. But they taught some of the best high level professional fighters. You don't necessarily have to be the guy or the person that everybody looks to be the guy that can instruct or show somebody something. So poor being a condition that the world heaps onto you, but then also one that you heap onto yourself, you see. Um, so it's a two-way street, maybe even more than a two-way street. It may be multi-lane when you really look at it from an honest point of view. But the point is that when the poor person speaks, the poor man in particular, when he speaks up, he normally says things that are righteous. Normally, you see, all those black men and women during the times of what people called the civil rights movement, the reason why many of them spoke up is because many of them were poor and they were tired of being poor. And they came from families of people who were sharecroppers, or as children, they sharecropped themselves, things that they may have kept from everyone or just didn't speak on because it was a normal, regular happenstance in the lives of everyday black people, men and women, regardless of their genetic origin at this point. So when you have this concept that that I'm saying something that doesn't resonate, I'm speaking to what has happened, throughout time. But if I just had to speak to a time that people can relate to, let's just talk about the civil rights, and let's just talk about how there was a group of people who sought things, okay, that were rightfully theirs, things that they should have been given as soon as they were given what was a release from hardcore bondage and servitude, which came only at the plight of war and the blight of the fact that the white man was dealing with now mass disease. Okay, that's what they don't talk about right during the Civil War. Starvation, via the form of famine. Some places suffered a small droughts or just the inability to accessible right on and potable water. Uh, so the thing is that you have a group of people who did this already, and they were poor as could be, and they came from roots of people who, once again, I need y'all to understand. Many of the black people who were civil rights leaders, like the elder ones, like the ones that people like look back and say, like, you know, like they were like the cornerstones to like the movement. Many of them grew up during the Depression. Many of them, for not even a lack of a better terms or a want of a better terms, would have been part of what you call the greatest generation. See, some people will forget this or will overlook this, but the stringent 18 years old or 17 years old age requirement was not always set in effect here in America. World War One, you had plenty of 13 and 14-year-old boys find their way into the fighting ranks and get killed in the trenches. Okay. World War Two, it was no different. So when you talk about the sacrifices that black men made and have made and are continue to make as the poorest, you know, group in the nation, you know, with their women and their children in tow with them, but you have it to where now a woman can pretty much sustain herself without a man, creating the idea that a man is not necessarily a mandatory figure in the household. Now, this isn't something that only black women suffer from, but because black people are a smaller group within a much larger group, it is much more devastating for their women of any biological caste to practice such a practice. However, because it's not shunned nor looked down upon, and it's actually encouraged by what we call the greater society, is something that is unavoidable. And the damage of it at this point is reaching such critical mass that people can say that we will soon be to the level of irreparable people. Now, no one wants to hear that, but I am here to tell you today, if the Most High God does not come back, okay? I'm talking about soon. People's hearts don't change soon. Black people won't have enough mental constitution to be able to save themselves. They won't. It's impossible for me to believe that. It's impossible for me to believe that factions of people who are different genetically to the core are going to be able to come together on things that they to the hilt kill each other over right now, are going to come together over and all of a sudden start agreeing upon when they're amalgamating with the same peoples who they claim are their enemies, giving them children, right? Marrying into their families, bringing them into their black families, and allowing these people to pollute who they are. No one can argue any of the legitimacy of the things that I say. Exactly. All you can do is leave and be upset. But that upsetness comes from me not telling any sort of funny face lies. Just straight up truth. Nobody wants to hear that. Black people are at condition red. I'm talking dark red. People are like, how do you know that? I'm like, you don't see it? They're about to give up on themselves. That's what the white man wants, is for black people to feel like as if there's no hope for us. We might as well go be with other people and breed ourselves out. What do you really think they want you to do? That's the ultimate scheme and plan here, people. That's the plan. That's the goal. People are like, that could never happen. I'm like, you don't have another. We're not 20 years into the future, bro. Okay, we're here right now, and if they have their way, they'll be able to force these things on the people. Black people already live in conclaves as it is, so the smaller they get in number, as people get older, people pass away, people die prematurely. Okay, the women continue to not want to have children at an earlier age, choose and would rather side with having children at a much later age. It's one of those things. where a person must respect and understand the value of self. Let me ask you guys something. What does it mean to you if I said that Enoch, for all intents and purpose, if you actually read the scripture, was poor? Right. There's no indication that Enoch, nor anyone before him, especially Adam, were people of great gain. There's no indication of this. So sometimes I just feel so much better when I draw in on the fact that I understand that the people that put these things out at first were not always in a position of great opulence. See, when people speak on Moses, they forget the fact that Moses was born to two Levite parents who would have, for all intents and purposes, would have been under the oppressive regime of the Egyptian Empire. Moses was raised with his mother till he was 12, then sent to go be with the Pharaoh's daughter, and raised up to live with the Egyptians as an Egyptian. But his understanding and his roots, he already knew who he was as a person. He's a Hebrew, right? But understand this though, because people will misconstrue the information and they'll change it for, once again, the betterment of their gain, so that way they can get something out of it, hoping to change your mind so that way you see things differently. I don't have to go to the Bible to tell you the things about the Bible, or scripture, gospel, whatever a person antiquated to be, because it is antique, but it's not obsolete. But whatever a person puts it in the place of being in their mind and renders to that, that is what it is. And in those places, it says exactly what I'm talking about. This is why a person can say to me, oh, the Bible doesn't have everything in it. Well, if that's the case, why does the Most High tell the people just abide to the laws of Moses? So even if it doesn't have every iota and shred of information available, right? Which I have never actually read a verse in the scripture that says that this one book has every single piece of information that has ever been circulated in existence in it. I've never read that in the book. So when people say that, I'm always kind of confused, because the range of events and circumstances that the book covers, right? And the way that it's spoken on, a person would at least, once again, somebody with a more open mind can see that the book speaks on things in a very profound and broad way that is easy to understand. However, when I say easy, I mean that when you try to change what it means, you're changing it, once again, for the betterment of self. And what I say right now, I'm not, this is not to better me as a person so much as it is to speak to the fact that you may be encountering as a person these sorts of situations in your own life where you're trying to figure out, why won't the people at least acknowledge the sensibility in what I'm speaking? And you might be just dealing with a group or a cast of people who, for the want of a better term, don't feel that you have what it is that they think is important enough to listen to you. You see, I've dealt with these types of people my whole life, where materialistic this, materialistic that. I have, on my mother's side and my father's side, several family members who have made several millions, in their life. A couple of them who I know for sure, silent millionaires, for a fact. No, No question, silent millionaire to this day. And and that's just one of those things where a person like that will, I'm not gonna say that they'll have their way, but the family will listen to them and kind of like do what they say to do because I have all this money and I've done this and I've done that, and you know this is why when the book of Ecclesiastes says that pretty much that money can make a person, can humble anyone. It can essentially, for the most part. Um, um, Men and women every day do things that they wouldn't normally do for money. Every day doesn't have to be sexual. It's just anything that they would not normally do. Any activity they wouldn't normally engage in. Uh, I think this is crucial. It's vital. But because we live in a society, in a world where it doesn't matter, so everybody's able to just kind of skip past those types of things and act like it's really not that important. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to be able to hold people accountable for what they say and what they're doing. And then you also have to be able to hold people to the standard of what we see them as a person. So this is why I thought it was funny. If you read Ecclesiasticus, it says that when the poor man stumbles, they'll help to overthrow him. Well, it's like, just going back to what I was saying earlier, about me fighting the case. There were several people who, when my situation happened, they like spoke to it silently without addressing me as a person, and they were very venomous. And I thought it was awkward because it was like, as opposed to you speaking anything, I mean, if you had nothing, if you didn't have anything, conducive to say and constructive to say, you shouldn't have said anything at all. But for the fact that you would once again would reach out and speak your mind on a situation, where in which if you did it, you would want to be lionized. I I can't understand that concept, and I'm trying to understand it now. Um, how a person, man, woman, or child can actually put into their mind such a thought, such an action that, okay, this person suffered this. I'm going to point the finger and say, it's your fault that this happened to you. But then you look back at your ancestors and say, well, they were fighting oppression. So, on what level is standing up for somebody not fighting oppression? Like, I mean, so like, once again, who determines these things? The rich? Can't be the poor. You follow what I'm saying? Because if it was the way that it's supposed to be, then anybody doing the right thing would be appreciated. And the just action and the just nature of the rightness of it would be appreciated. But that's not how it goes. You have many of people who will question the intent of someone who has, you could question how much they have to gain because they had nothing to lose in the first place. So maybe because they had very little to lose, their their threshold for gain is also very low, if even available. So there may be nothing in it for them because there was nothing to lose in it at first. And I think that people will overlook this and make it seem as if that's not truly a credible piece of information, or as if that doesn't matter. But that does matter, though. And that means that we're just dealing with, once again, a source of people, a group of people who, in my mind, for their own betterment, can't discern what an actually truly strong or truly weak decision is, just based on how they treat people and their condition. See, I have to speak to it. If you are a black person and you've accumulated anything in this country, right? People automatically assume two things. You're a sellout, right? Or you do something illegal. I could argue three and say that, it's a little bit of both. Because even when people will be like, oh man, he's just blessed or he's just a good dude or whatever, there's always somebody who's willing to say that you're a nefarious character. There's always somebody willing to say or to bring up some old shit and be like, well, once upon a time, they did this to me. But they won't speak on the background as to what they may have committed that caused that situation with them to come forward. Um, there's just so many different things, to actually talk about and bring up when you speak about something like this. See, the poor man, when he speaks, he really is attempting to do something that most people don't have to do, which is give up their time, right? And know that no thing may come from it. You know, the rich have their guaranteed coffers. There's people who, no matter what, are going to donate to some of these guys. No matter what, they donate to these guys. No matter what, they donate to these guys. Right on? Doesn't matter. There's other people, though, who would never ask for an iota, don't want an iota from anybody. And they're seen as, they call you a pocket counter, but at the same time, these same people are fleecing the same people that they claim that they want to protect and want to help. And they're taking the very resources that they need from them to protect themselves. And as opposed to just giving them clearer, better, and more precise instruction as to how to handle their finances, right? As to how to conduct themselves and specific actions that they could take that would probably increase productivity and maybe even the quality of their life. They don't tell them any of those things, right? They tell the people that they have to buy that information. And this is why I become so concerned, is because on what level am I supposed to trust these guys, right? When do I get to say, okay, you know what? None of them are trustworthy. They're all the devil, every last one of them. You know, I've had such a long couple days where at work I had a dude try to pull some bullshit where, he's talking about parking a vehicle a certain way, and he almost tore the car up. The same way that they always try to tell me not to tear the vehicles up. And I was just like, is this guy serious? Then he acted real cool after that because, he realized he almost tore some stuff up. But it's like, why does it take for people to almost, ruin something to realize, or to ruin something to realize that, hey, you either don't know as much as you think you do, or the situation was just fine before you just tried to alter it. Either one is fine with me, you know. And there was this guy who was going to move a car, and this will just tell you how other people will think somebody's full of shit. There was a guy who was going to move a car who was the manager, and he's going to move this car for this guy in a truck. And I said, no, he moved this. I said, no, Ren, don't move the car. So he stops moving it. And now this guy has to back this truck up in this tight ass little spot. Once again, almost tears off this mirror, which going to take days, if not a whole week, to replace. Ordering it. Now, what's funny is that when I spoke to the situation, nobody said that I was wrong to say what I said, which was, now, I could have done that, but if I had done that, people would have been all on my dick talking about, oh, don't hit nothing, don't hit nothing. I said, so as opposed to dudes letting me do my job, they want to dick ride. But people can't handle that, but they handle that because they realize, like, he's right. You feel what I'm saying? You can't try to tell me how to do my job. But at the same time, the way that you told me, the way that you just did it is a way that you would normally shun me of attempting to do my job. It doesn't make any sense. You see what I mean? Because that could have created a potential conflict. Uh, when you work with people who don't understand things, sometimes this is how it goes. But just back to the message of just, man, the poor man speaking, the poor man or the rich, when they speak, you have to really listen to what they're saying, because a rich person will sound like they're trying to help you, but really they're just trying to help themselves. And a poor person will sound like they're against you and are your enemy, but really they're on your side. Uh, it's all just a matter of how you perceive things and how you're able to take it all in. You know, you can't make anybody accept what you're saying to them. Um, what else is there? I mean, this is one of those issues where it's like it's cut and dry to the point. Mm. I'll sit over here and yawn and think about it. What else is there, y'all? Because the poor man speaks. He speaks every day. If it's not me, if it's not you, it's somebody you know. What else is there? What does the poor man not need that the rich man has? He needs food, he needs shelter, he needs water, he needs companionship, right? Clothes. What else is there? Hmm. Do do you know what's funny? I want to say in Exodus, it's speaking on judgment. And one of the things it says is that you're not supposed to show pity to the poor. The poor guy does something that anybody else can do, right on, that's just as evil and wicked. They're supposed to be held to that same charge and that same degree. And I want you to understand why that's so important. Is because you will hold a poor man accountable to that level, right? But yet he doesn't have the same things that a rich person has. But the tides can always turn, because the Most High God makes live and He makes to die. See what I'm saying? I love talking to y'all. It is so fun, so refreshing. I lived all week. I lived all week. I lived all week just to do this. I'm exhausted, exhausted, beat down. Because I'm always up. But not just that, because got a lot on my mind. A lot I got to do. It is always a blessing and an honor just to be in you guys' presence. Because most people don't give me a chance. Y'all do. Appreciate that. So before I close out this little session, does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments, anything that they'd like to say? I'm just gonna sit here for a moment of silence, and I'll wait to see what manifests or does not manifest. Taking forever. Uh, my computer is so slow. Computer is taking forever. No, no. So, brothers and sisters, if you have nothing more for me than in the great words of wisdom of all the teachers who taught me the things that I learned in this life, if you have nothing else for me, and at this moment, in the present point in time, I have nothing else for you, and I bid you an adieu. So while I work my way to this exit button, I'll let y'all know I thank y'all for just coming in and just stopping in real quick. We'll do something tomorrow. I don't know if it's gonna. I really want to do a Bible thing. I've been reading so much of the scripture lately. I've been heavy on the Bible, heavy, heavy, heavy. And I want to do something like that. But at the same time, I want to do like a little weekly update. But I just want to. I want to do one and then the other. So we'll see which one comes first. Uh, personally, just much love to everybody. It is such an honor just to be here, to be alive. Pray for your boy. I know they're not going to lift the earth, bro. I know that. I know. I'm going to have to probably reschedule court and do a whole bunch of BS, but it is what it is. You guys give me hope. You guys give me so much hope. I'm gonna figure out this webcam situation or a live stream situation, and we can call it a day. All right. Now,